Salisbury, and right now joined on the set by author, speaker, advocate, Karlos Dillard. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Mari. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I can tell by that big smile. You're like, welcome. You know what I'm saying?
I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be here. I've been a huge fan of yours since before the protest, and I'm really proud of everything you've been doing for our community. And I'm just thrilled to be here. So thank you.
Well, man, we're thrilled to have you. And really also thrilled to be talking about something that's very important, and especially for our community. You know, people might not know, but like Black kids make up a disproportional amount of children who are in foster care in our state. And, you know, unfortunately, Black kids also make up all these leading indicators across the foster care system. And so I'm glad that you're here, and we're going to talk about some things. But first of all, tell everybody about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Karlos Dillard. I was born in Detroit, Michigan. I live here in Seattle. I've been here for the last 6 years. I'm a lived experience foster care advisor. So that just means that I advise people who want to be foster parents, who want to be adoptive parents, especially if they are thinking about doing that transracially. And then I also wrote a book, so that makes me a published author.
Yeah, got an author of it. That's what I'm talking. I mean, you know, I don't think people realize that it's like that leap. There's so many people who are like, man, I can write a book. Boom, it's the leap.
It's really just, like you said, everyone wants to write a book, but then it's really just the determination just to write it and get it done. Then also, I mean, I'll be honest with you. You guys were talking about the accessibility of things to Black people. It's not real accessible to have publishers reach out to you and want to pay you a forward or want to promote your book up front with you. I had to do everything out of pocket, just like most Black people do. We do it from the bottom and work our way up. So,
well, in that case, listen, we're gonna do some work for you today. First of all, let me get this on this camera right here. This is the book. It's called Ward of the State, and I'll let you tell everybody about it.
Yeah, so Ward of the State, a memoir of foster care, is my experience in foster care. I grew up in Michigan. I was in 37 different foster homes. Like you guys were saying earlier, like kids are just bounced around. And this book goes through each chapter of my experience in foster care. One thing that I always talk about when I'm doing speeches or talks on foster care is that it's not a monolith. So when you read this book, this is my lived experience. Someone else is going to have a lived experience in foster care that's completely different. So the best way for us as a community to educate ourselves on foster care is to get stories of many lived experience of many former foster youth as possible. That way we can have a better idea of what the system really looks like from the people who went through it.
All right. So what are some of the challenges, maybe even pre-COVID, but especially like during COVID and everything else? What are some of the challenges that are facing foster kids and also foster parents?
Well, right off the bat, even before COVID, we had a huge issue with the amount of children in foster care. A lot of people would think that people just can't take care of their kids. And when you look at it, foster care it's set up systemically, just like a lot of things and a lot of issues in our country. So we need to address systemic oppression, systemic racism. We need to address why can't parents get jobs? Why are people making less than $40,000 a year in a city that's the medium average income is $100 and something thousand a year? Those things all contribute to foster care. And then when we actually get into the actual system of foster care, people think that foster care is set up to save children or they become foster parents because they want a family. And that's not what foster care is. I focus on 3 R's when I'm talking about foster care. The first one is reunification. Foster care, the most important thing in foster care is to reunify that child with their family. The second thing is to rehabilitate that family, whether it be financially rehabilitate them or medically rehabilitate them if they have some type of drug issue. And the third thing that you have to work on and look at is resources. As our community, we need to push resources, personal resources and community resources to organizations who support foster youth and former foster youth like myself. We need resources so we can go out there and push and make sure that people know the truth about foster care. So those are the 3 R's. And if we do that as a community, we can overhaul the whole system as a whole.
Right. And I know that one of the things that we had talked about last year was that there's so many children in the foster care system and not enough foster homes or foster parents that children from Washington State were actually being sent out of state to this whole other, it wasn't quite a detention center, but wasn't quite like a place for children to prosper and grow either. And it was a big push on the head of DSHS and Governor Inslee. I think the push was like, bring our children home.
You would be surprised how many kids actually end up in juvenile. I was in juvenile for no reason of my own. I didn't break any laws. I didn't get in trouble. It was simply because they ran out of foster homes. In Seattle, in Washington State, we have about 10,000 kids who are currently in foster care. That's a lot of kids. Do we have 10,000 foster homes that are going to house each of those kids? Those are the numbers that you really have to look at. And we don't want our kids going to juvenile or going into these temporary placement places, which may not be a positive influence on their life, especially with people who are already going to struggle with a lot of problems just from being in the system.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's something that's really kind of overlooked,
For sure.
The whole issue around foster care. Now, let me ask you this though, just circling back around, when you said that a lot of times people, they don't realize some of the ways that people are in foster care. Sometimes people assume people don't want their kids, or their kids are abandoned, or it's orphans or stuff like that. But there's all kinds of different routes where people actually end up in foster care. And maybe you can talk about some of those.
Yeah, a lot of people have the assumption that kids end up in foster care because their parents didn't want them or there was a drug issue. When in reality, the number one reason why kids are in foster care is neglect. And neglect can be literal neglect, or it could be something as small as poverty. And when you have a poverty issue, if a person's poor, if a mom can't take care of their kid, or can't make sure that their kid has adequate childcare, and then they leave them at home by themselves or with someone who's not so safe. That's what a majority of the kids end up in foster care. Not saying that all, but like I said earlier in our conversation, it's not a monolith. You can't really pinpoint on one thing or one reason why kids end up in foster care. And that's what we don't want to really focus on, why they end up in foster care. We really want to focus on is how to get them back with their family. And if that's not possible, what's the best outcome for their situation?
Okay. What do you want people, you kind of touched on it earlier about it being your journey, Ward of the State, but what do you want people to take away from your book after they read it?
What I want people to take away from this book is that, I guess my thing is the story of the boy the world forgot, but he survived. I want people to take away that after the kid turns 18, these are adults. These are still people with stories. We focus on the youth when we actually have hundreds of thousands of former foster adults like myself who are out here, who are struggling, who have the answers to fix this system. When you read this book, I want you to go and I want you to wonder, who else has a story? I want to hear their story. I want to see what's different. When you read this book, I want you to understand that this little boy survived some of the harshest things that a human can survive. But that was just my story. There are over 400,000 yearly other books that should be written just like this. And that's really what I wanted to hit home when writing this book.
All right. So quickly, why don't you tell us, and you can look in that camera right
there. Okay, I don't know what camera.
So I want you to look in that camera right there. First of all, tell people what are some of the things the community can do to be able to support foster kids, foster parents, foster homes?
So foster youth are at the most at risk in our own community. So if you're here in Seattle, there are a lot of things that you can do. You can reach out to organizations like Treehouse. They have annual fundraisers. They have things that they can do like backpack drives. You can donate your time to them. You can also become a CASA worker. That's a court-appointed special advocate. That's pretty much a person who talks on behalf of a child. If you don't want to dedicate your time to become a full foster parent, you become a respite home where you're just like a weekend vacation spot where kids can get a break. There are tons of things that you can do to help foster children, especially in your community. But it just takes that step. Like right in the book, you have to take the first step. Everyone wants to help, but what are you actually going to do, and what actual actionable steps are you taking to make a difference for former and current foster youth in your communities?
All right, we're gonna let you stay right there in that camera, and we're gonna let you promote your book here. Tell people how they can get up with that and get up with you.
Yeah, so my book is called Ward of the State: A Memoir of Foster Care. You can purchase it wherever books are sold: Barnes & Noble, Amazon. It's on Kindle. The audio version will be out by Christmas. You can also grab a copy of it on my website at karlosdillard.com. If you buy it there, I've signed it for you. I leave you a little note. You get some extras. But yeah, it's everywhere where you can possibly get a book. I also want to do a little self-promotion. I just started a podcast where I interview other former foster youth called Wards of the State. and they get to tell their lived experience. So I think that that was another way for me to kind of give my platform to other youth, so there's more stories so people can hear and not just my story.
All right, good stuff.
Yeah.
Karlos Dillard, author, advocate, speaker, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. Oh, I appreciate it.
We're gonna stay up on this topic. You gonna come back and join us again?
Of course. As long as there's foster kids in the system, I'm going to be speaking on it.
All right, good stuff.